Hi, my name is Britt Gilman, and I'm the Research Project Analyst at the Deep River Public Library. Since 2022, the Deep River Library and partners have been co-leading this local history project titled Not Born from a Virgin Forest, Deep River and Area's Earliest History. The title of this project is derived from early recorded accounts of Virginia Adams Hunt, who proposed that the area that we now call Deep River had housed families for decades prior to the arrival of the town, and therefore Deep River was not born from a virgin forest. This project was started in response to requests to expand understanding of life in our area prior to 1945. I'd like to thank our partners, the Schoolhouse Museum, the Laurentian Hills Library, Professor Stephanie Adams, Alex Stevens of Deep Tech, the Deep River District Community Foundation, and to the New Horizons for Seniors grant, who generously funded this project and made our work possible. The following oral history that you're about to watch is a subjective first-person account, an individual recording of life in the early days of Deep River and area. We hope that by asking questions and capturing responses, we're able to add these oral histories to our collection of historical accounts to expand understanding. Enjoy.
Why don't we start by telling us a little bit about how you two know each other, how you've come to be sitting here together in front of us today.
Well, we've known each other since 1945. We were in grade 7 together.
Yeah. And we met at Cockcroft School. Well, I don't know if we met before that.
Well, we went to school in Chalk River. There was one of the little green buses took us to school. And then they built Cockcroft School. We went there.
Yes, we went to Chalk River for, there's 2 classrooms at Chalk River in the basement of their big brick school. And in December, 2 rooms at Cockcroft School were ready. And so the grade 7 and 8s, which was a combined classroom, was moved to Cockcroft School for the month of December. And I think the other children came later when 4 rooms were built. And that was the wing along the river. And we met while going to school. And I think I got here in September, and I don't know when you came. It was a month or so later, I think.
Yeah, I'm not absolutely sure. I know you were here when I got here.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's quite a start to a friendship.
Yeah, it was.
That's lasted for decades. That's wonderful. Tell us a little bit about your families and why you both came to the area.
You go ahead, Trish.
Well, my father worked for NRC. He was a physicist, and he was here probably before the family came. We were in Montreal. He was at the Montreal labs. And I had a mother that was in bed with TB, so we had kind of a strange existence, my sister and I.
That would be difficult, I'm sure. Unique, and if not difficult.
We came from Nobel, which my father worked for Defense Industries Limited during the war. So we were there from 42 to 45. And in the spring of 45, the people working there were given an option of where they would transfer you to. And so one of the options was Deep River, which wasn't built yet. I mean, it was in the process. And my father came in June, and he stayed at a cabin at Moore's Lodge. And we didn't have a house ready till September, so we came in September. We came by train. We went to Sudbury because I had relatives there, and we got a train from Sudbury to Chalk River, and then came. And when we arrived at Deep River Road, which wasn't anything then, was a guardhouse at the top of the road, and we had to sign in and go to our house, which was on Pine Street, which is now where Value Mart is. It was just a short street. We were number 3 Pine, and there were only a few streets in town at that point. There was like a few houses.
Where was the guardhouse? I tried to remember.
They moved it down the hill because there was a steam plant where Chevron Sweets is now. And they moved the guardhouse to the bottom of the hill later. I don't know when, but That's where we used to get the bus to go to school, Chuck River. I just remember that. And there were only a few streets and a few houses in Deep River, like the few houses on Summit and on Glendale and Pine and Hillcrest. And I guess, of course, Beach Street was being built, and that's when you moved to Beach.
I just remember Dr. Skelly's office was in a wartime for, and next door was the Eaton's order office.
And across the street from that was the grocery store in the first house on Summit in the wartime 6, and the wartime 4 was the meat market next door. And on Hillcrest was the library was developed eventually, just a few houses down.
I thought the library was in the community center.
It was, yeah, eventually, but it started, I think, on that street, if I recall. Memories can fail, but anyway.
What were your first impressions coming to this town under construction?
I loved it, coming from the city of Montreal. And here was this place that was nothing but sand and bare feet.
And we came from Georgian Bay, so I thought the sand was awful because we enjoyed the beaches on the rocks. And so I was a little bit taken aback, I think. And then going on a bus to Chalk River to school, which I left a big school in Nobel. So it was a little bit off-putting to start with, but I mean, when you're with your family, I mean, that's the important part, so yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the houses that you grew up in. It sounded like you moved to Pine Street, but then would have had to move after.
Yeah, we are on a wartime 6, and the first winter, it was desperately cold, and I can remember my mother and her friends bought felt boots to wear in the house because the floors were so cold. And the next winter, they moved us next door while they put in another layer of flooring in the house because it was only a single, I guess it was a subfloor that was in the houses. And so we were in next door for a few weeks while they replaced the flooring. And then I think in '49 we moved to Glendale to what they called B3s, and eventually my parents bought the house. I think that was the idea, yeah.
I remember how cold it was. There was frost on the walls all around the windows. And
yeah. And if you put cereal in a cupboard against an outdoor wall, it froze to the wall. And so did the blankets on the children's beds.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, it was not great.
So what were you doing for heat? It was firewood and coal?
Coal.
At the time? Okay.
And they
yes, the coal truck used to come and they'd put a chute in the basement window, and the coal would slide into this bin in your basement.
And we had a bin on the back of the house, attached to the house, and that would be filled. And they had a burner in the living room, a stand-up stove.
Okay.
And in the kitchen was a cook stove. It was coal-fired. So that's what my mother cooked on.
Was that different than
Yes.
before?
Well, no, not really. In Nobel, we were under similar circumstances because it was a wartime 4. When we left Nobel, we went to school there for the first week in September because my mother, I guess, needed time to pack. And they were cutting the houses in half all around us because we were in a wartime 4 there, and loading them on a flatbed and shipping them out. And the men used to tease us and say, your house is next, so you're going to be on the truck tomorrow morning. Anyway, we saw our house come into Deep River, and it's on Huron Street. And we knew it was ours because, you know, when you hang pictures on the wall for a couple of years, it leaves an imprint. Well, my mother had a special picture that had open, what would you call it, like an open fretwork in it. And we saw this printing on the wall when it came into town. So that was our experience with houses.
Did you get to go back into the house once it was
No,
all
we
set?
never did.
You
No,
never did,
no.
did you?
So
What about for you? Tell me about your house.
I still have it. It's I inherited it. It's the first house on Beach Avenue. The houses that were built, there were A houses on one side of the street and B houses on the next side, and then on the next street there were C5s and then C6s. And the A houses had 4 bedrooms and the B houses had 3. And again, it depended on what your job was, what sort of house you had.
Yeah.
So single men, professionals lived in the staff hotel.
When it was built, yeah. It wasn't there at first. They had camps.
Yeah, I know they did.
Yeah, and they were where the liquor store is now, and in that area were the camps, and they were like H style buildings, and I think a lot of them were built by the POWs that came in town, and especially up on Hill House. They would come in. In fact, we saw them. They'd come in a big truck, and they wore uniforms with big white circles on the back, so you knew that they were the POWs, and they built a lot of the structures. The far as I can't remember when the staff hotel was built, but it was early on. I mean, it was being built, I think, right from the beginning.
Which?
The staff hotel was started.
Yeah, it was there
early.
quite early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the corner where the liquor store is was the skating rink, and it was the tennis court in the summertime, the skating rink in the wintertime, and down the street was the Crawley McCracken cafeteria, which was also used as a gathering place sometimes for meetings and parties.
The skating rink had a rink shack with a boys' entrance and a girls' entrance, just like schools used to do.
Oh yeah, right.
And there was a stove in it for heat. We spent our winters on the skating rink and skiing, and our summers at Lemire Beach. I mean, it was just, like I say, I loved it.
Yeah, there were lots of activities. I mean,
There was a club for everything.
Yeah.
Among the adults, you know. It was a very young town.
What about for the children? Were you involved in some of the clubs and organizations, or was it more?
Well, they built a community center, and it was our center. And in the community center was at the top was the bowling alley, which is still there, and across it was a coffee shop. And downstairs, down at the bottom, was eventually the library, but upstairs in a room was a room that the community church used, and I think the Anglican church used it too for a while. Mm-hmm. And there was the big auditorium.
But there was a big gym.
Big gym. So all the activities took place there. And the teenagers on Friday night had the room upstairs that was church on Sunday morning. So we had, it was organized, and the director, recreation director, sort of oversaw it. And we had a committee that looked after activities that we'd have done there, and it was really quite an active group. I mean, we felt pretty lucky to have all that. And I felt sorry for the teenagers, actually, in the last number of years. I don't know if they have a place to go or not, but we had, there was a couple that came to town, and they were, I don't know how they were involved in dancing, but they came to the teenage club and taught dancing, ballroom dancing.
Do you remember Mr. Farwell was the principal of our school, and his wife taught us the Highland Fling and the Sailor's Hornpipe and a waltz?
And we performed it on the stage at the community center for some concert. I can remember that.
Yeah, it's great.
But Mr. Farwell, he was an artist too. And when we moved to the Cockcroft School, he would come to school with his layouts that he had drawn for the book called Science Through the Seasons, and show us what he was sending in to be printed in this book. And we had the books in school. And I don't know why I don't have one, but I don't seem to have one of the texts. But he was quite an amazing person. We really enjoyed him. I can't remember what else to tell you about the activity. Well, as you said, yeah, we skied. And what we did was, when we were on Pine Street, we skied out to Hill House. I mean, there was no transportation. Parents didn't drive anywhere.
And skis in those days, you just altered the binding to go from downhill to cross country.
Yeah.
So you just put your skis on at your back door and skied to the hill.
And then you were skiing down.
And then you hooked them under. There was hooks on the side. You'd hook the heel brace down, and then you skied down the hill. And we also could ski out when Double Dip was formed. We would ski out to Double Dip past Hill House and continue on the trail. And you get maybe 2 or 3 runs and then you'd go home.
Right.
That's what all.
And there were people like my dad who went across and skied up and down Mount Martin.
Up as well.
Yeah.
Well, he climbed the hill and he skied down, and I think he only got 1 run in.
Oh, well, you would. I went once, and that was enough. And you climbed, but you had to climb with your skis on. There was a trail, and there was a tower at the top. There was a fire tower, and that was the goal, to get up to the top. But I remember coming down, and of course it's just a narrow trail through the trees, and falling down into a gully, and having to find your way out of it, and everybody else wouldn't even see you. They could just go by. Yeah, my sister was the biggest skier of all. She did that many times, but I did it once, and that was enough for me. But actually, Christmas Day, the first Christmas we were in Deep River, my sister and I walked across the river. And when I think of it now, and it was frozen solid, and there was no dam, like there was the rapids up above, but it was frozen solid, and nobody seemed to be concerned at all.
No.
It was quite safe, whereas now you would never consider doing that. But, yeah.
Well, my sister swam across the river, and she was 12.
Was anyone with her? Or
Yes, she had her friend who had her junior swimmer and a canoe, and that was it, with my mother wringing her hands on the beach.
Oh my goodness.
Another thing that happened was the construction house that was down near Tricia's place that became the yacht club. They used it for building boats, and my father was involved in building the Y-Flyer sailboats, and they built a fleet. And so we sailed, and that was really fun. And we shared this first sailboat you shared with another family, and it was the Cornwalls, and they had 3 boys, and my family was 3 girls. But the only thing that we protested was the fact that when there was any big event, the boys got to go, the girls didn't. So that was my beginning of saying girls have the rights too, you know.
Did your protests mean that you...
Well, I protested, but it didn't help a lot.
It didn't help.
My father was always trying to, appeal us by taking us out of the sailboat. So yeah. And then the second set of boats they built were just outboard motorboats with little cabins, and he built one. And so my mother liked it better because she wasn't fond of the sailboat as much as we were.
Are there any of those Y-Flyers still around?
I don't know, but they were around for years and years and years. And I don't know if anyone has one now or not, but I think there was about 18. I mean, they raced. It was really a big event. It was great fun.
It sounds like such a unique time and place with a lot of freedom, a lot of recreation.
That's right.
Does
It
that,
was, yeah. And then we went to high school in Pembroke because there was no high school yet here. The year after we went to Pembroke, they had grade 9 here at Keys School.
That soon?
I think it was a year or 2 after, because my sister went to the first year here in Deep River, and she was 2 years behind.
She was in that first class.
She was in the first class. So we took a colonial coach, took us to Pembroke every day and back. The only problem with it was you couldn't stay after school, and I mean they couldn't give you a penalty because to stay.
There were no detentions because we just had to get on that bus.
So anyway, but they had we got transportation when there's big events on at night. Like we went to concerts. I remember one concert that I'll never forget was the Trapp family came.
really?
Yeah, and it was the original Trapp family. It wasn't just a copy; it was the real thing. And I think they provided transportation for us to go to see that. I don't know if you were here then or not.
I remember that they had a formal dance at the high school in Pembroke, Christmas night.
Really?
I'm sure our parents,
Oh, they hated it. I
because
remember,
here's Christmas Day going on, and we're getting all dressed up in our long dress, and off we go to Pembroke.
Christmas dinner had to be right on the dot so that you could get out. But that
right.
was the tradition there. The big formal was Christmas night.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Would youth from Pembroke come to visit in Deep River?
No, not usually.
No.
No, everything was down there. So, yeah.
So To back up just a little bit about school, you first went to Chalk River, and then you were there for a shorter period of time. And
Just a
then-
few months, yeah.
Just a few months.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just till December, September to December. And then Keys was being built, of course, and we moved into Keys as soon as the room was ready. And then they gradually added on to Cockcroft. Did I say Keys? I meant Cockcroft School. They gradually added on so that then all the classes were
The
at
Cockcrofts had lived in that 3-story house on Beach Avenue. And that's why the 3 stories, because they had 5 children and a nanny, and that they brought from England. It's funny, I can remember so well that house and those.
I can remember the family. I remember the girls came to school in their school uniforms that they wore in England, and they were really pretty. I mean, they were gray sweaters and
Gray,
the gray
pleated skirts and
knee
gray knee
highs.
socks.
And we thought, how are they going to survive the winter in knee highs? But
Yeah.
it seemed to, yeah. When you talk about people coming from England, beside us on Pine Street, a family moved into the house next door from England, the Rolfs, I still remember their name. And they brought their nanny with them. And she had her bedroom across from mine upstairs. And she had long red blonde hair, reddish blonde. Quite an attractive young girl. I don't know how old she would have been. And she would sit by her window and comb her hair. Behind us was still the construction building for Fraser Brace used. And one of the fellows would come over with his guitar and serenade her under her window. So we really got a kick out of that. So I always thought, well, maybe he's serenading me too, but no, I was serenading her.
Were there teachers who had a particularly strong influence on you, either in Chalk River or Cockcroft?
Well, in Chalk River, we had, there was Mrs. Hill had the primary class, and Miss Baker had the senior class. And Miss Baker was quite a, how would you describe her?
I don't know.
Rather severe, okay, in appearance, but I mean, I think she was fairly kind and nice. But we had Mr. Farwell, which we all loved, and that was our first, and he was the principal as well as,
And Mrs. Johnson.
and Mrs. Johnson taught us, and she was the wife of a man who lived in Deep River who eventually opened Beaver Lumber. But her sons went to high school too with us. We all went together. I think there was only 8 of us in grade 7 and 8 when we first came.
Were there 8?
Was it that many? Maybe in grade 8, but in grade 7 there was only a few of us, eh?
Isn't that funny?
How
I
would you-
remember the big boys at the back of the room. I wonder if they did that on purpose.
I don't know.
Sat them back there.
I don't know what else to tell you about Cockcroft School. We were only there for like the 2 years, so.
And how did you feel about needing to go to Pembroke to go to school?
I think we
Another
just-
great adventure.
Yeah. We just accepted it as part. I mean, we just thought it was part of what we had to do. We did.
Yeah, we
so,
just went along, I think.
Yeah. And we met a whole another group of people in Pembroke. Like
We all
had
managed to
friends.
make friends in Pembroke, and I used to go and stay the night with friends I made in high school. And
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did too. When there was something special on, you know, we could sometimes stay with somebody there. Yeah, it was great fun. And they had track meets, which we went to. So they'd be all over the county. So you would find a way. I remember finding a way to get to one track meet that I went to and drive with somebody that was driving. And I guess my parents didn't object too strongly. So it was quite fun.
playing basketball in towns all up and down the valley. It was great fun.
It was, yeah. We got to know a lot of people that way. In fact, some of them had cottages here along the river, and that we met at high school, and so that made another joint association.
And what did you call, we had, you know, where the boys wore army uniforms?
Oh, cadets.
Yes.
Did you hear of cadets?
Tell me about your involvement with cadets or people who were in cadets.
I don't know exactly what they did. I mean, the boys wore uniforms and they marched and they had a band. We had a school band in Pembroke, which was very active, and they played it almost every morning at the opening exercises.
Mr. Nix, who was the music teacher, he was really great.
He was quite fantastic. Yeah. And so that was another event, and they had a choir too, as well as the band. So
I think we did the Gilbert and Sullivan. Miss Baker also did Gilbert and Sullivan. Do you remember?
No,
Elizabeth Nugent.
Oh yes, I do. Yes.
I'm just thinking of you traveling around the valley a little bit. And I know there was buses and public transportation in a way that there is not now, but were you both ready to get your driver's license at
Yes.
16? Did your families have cars that you could then take?
I wanted a driver's license, and my father said you have to know how a car works. And I can remember sitting down with him at night, having coffee with him when my mother went to choir practice, and he would teach me about a car and how it ran, and so I learned a lot about cars. And he was very involved we always had an old car. It was never a newer one at that point in time. So he was always working on the car on occasion. So yeah, and so I would drive the car in the driveway back and forth. And I remember one day I backed over a tree, a little, like a sapling, and it got caught under the fender. And my mother had to come out and stand on the tree, or I had to stand on the tree to get the car backed up off the tree. So that was before a license. So I don't know how old I was when I finally got my license. I guess I was 16 or 17.
Did you have to apply the knowledge that you learned from your father in the evenings?
Well, I don't think boys liked you to be knowledgeable. So, I don't think I ever had to, really. I mean, it was interesting to know if things were going wrong, that what was wrong. But yeah, no, it was good to know.
Another place the buses came into play, they ran a bus from Deep River to Pembroke so the ladies could go shopping in the early
every
days.
Thursday.
Thursday?
I think it was every Thursday.
Thursday, yes.
Yeah, they could go to Pembroke. But that was the advantage we had of going to high school in Pembroke, because we had this main street of lovely stores to visit at lunchtime sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a
Used to
plus.
go to Doran's and try on dresses.
It was a ladies' wear. Now Deep River eventually had stores. I don't know if you want to hear about that yet or not, but
Sure, yeah.
we had eventually the shopping center was built, and we had the A&P store. We had Eaton's in that strip where the Giant Tiger is now, and a drugstore, and a barber shop, and a shoemaker's. We had more stores than they've had in years here.
Shoe stores, too, at one point.
Yeah, we had the Ritters had a dry goods store, and they also had menswear on the other strip where the liquor store is.
But there were so
And there
many
was ladies' wear,
clubs
too.
and organizations in those days. My mother belonged to the drama club, and every time something was missing at our house, we knew it was in a play.
You could recognize it when you watched the play.
We even had a cat once that was in Yeah.
Do you think that your mother enjoyed being in Deep River? Do you think it was a good space for your parents?
I'm not sure. I think she certainly joined into all kinds of things. At first she wasn't very healthy, but then she was able, after a while, was able to. And the drama club definitely was a big part of her life.
Well, my mother was very involved with the community church and the women's club. There's a women's club, and they had all kinds of activities going on, so that was very much involving her. And she sang in the choir. I can't think of anything else she did. She was always active anyway. So I think she enjoyed it because she felt Deep River seemed to be more settled. At first it was supposed to be a 5-year project, I think, but it turned out to be, as you know, a lot longer than 5 years. Now we're up to, 75 or so? So, yeah.
I'm just imagining those early days. The town was in a lot of construction, a lot of transition. The war had just ended.
Yeah.
Um, It must have felt unique, time and place, but maybe not for
us, I guess.
children.
Then we didn't know anything different. I don't think. Well, you did. You lived in a city, and I didn't. But I think Deep River was a very social place, and the neighbors were wonderful. Like we had the great neighbors everywhere. So it was it was a really good place to come with a family. And then, of course, Lemure Beach was the center for us in the summertime, and we spent all our days on the beach in the summertime. So,
And kids just went out. I mean, nobody had to organize it or chaperone it or.
yeah, and they had playground events eventually too, which was a little later when my children were young, and they could join the playground in the summertime, and it was like a daily thing.
Yes, I was a playground leader. That was fun too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Then as a teenager, I worked at Moore's Lodge one summer in the dining room, and that was an experience.
What was that like?
Well, it was fun. Yeah, it was quite fun, and you met a lot of people there. And then one summer I worked at Eaton's store, and I wasn't sure I liked that so much. I found sometimes the management was a little bit hard on you. If you had a friend come in, you weren't allowed to talk to them or anything. So I mean, there was silly things like that. But it was, it was a good experience. And then I worked at the plant one summer in the stores department, and you did too, Trish.
Mm-hmm. I worked in the accounting department. Yeah. Taught me one thing.
What was that?
That's not what I wanted to do.
I'm glad you said that, because I did the same thing. That was one thing I didn't want to do either. When I graduated from grade 8, Mr. Farwell took each one of us into his office. I don't know if you remember that. And had a little conference with us about what we were going to do and what our goals were and whatnot. And he said to me, well, you should think about being a teacher. And that stuck with me, and that's what I did. And I don't know why, because you had choices: a teacher, a secretary, or a nurse.
Wasn't much, was it?
Yeah, I guess you could go to university.
I guess the odd girl went and became a doctor or something, but
it wasn't the common choice. So I knew I didn't want to be a nurse, and I didn't want to work in an office. So anyway, I decided teaching was pretty good.
And it worked out for you. You were happy
really well,
with that.
yeah.
What about for you, Trish? Do you remember that conversation in grade 8 about what you wanted?
do you know, I don't.
Okay. Well, I guess I was so impressed with that man and his
I know you
artwork
were, yeah.
that I guess he really, impressed me and also influenced me a lot. So.
I know you described a little bit about some of the special occasions, like on Christmas Day or, sorry, I'm just going to make noise here for a second. I'm wondering if you have memories of your family about other important celebrations or events in the area.
The Winter Carnival was a really big event, which
Okay.
we always participated in as kids, and my family did too. What other occasions were there? Just general daily things, I guess. But you mean family occasions? My mother grew up in Huntsville, Ontario, and so I had grandparents over there. So that was our other go-to place. And so they had a cottage too over there. So we went and visited them quite a lot. So that was a big family, and that was a big family. So it was always family getting together in Huntsville.
Did you travel back to Montreal, Trish, for yourself?
Well, my family, both sides of it, were from Nova Scotia.
Okay.
So we went to Nova Scotia every summer. During the Second World War, an uncle of mine who was in the army came to Montreal, and this was when my mother was first ill. And he gathered up my sister, who was 3, and me, and we got on a train and went to Halifax to be with my grandparents. And it was full of sailors. That's all. No civilians at all on that train. And they made such a fuss over my sister, who was rather adorable. Nobody needs an adorable sister. Yeah.
I think younger sisters always got treated. The older sister was the one that had to go and fetch it and bring them back home or something.
That's right, yeah.
Did religion play a role in your early family life here in Deep River in the early days?
Well, I went to community church. My mom did, and I went to Sunday school.
Okay.
And later on, I played the piano for Sunday school. And then we had that was my, I was always involved with the church as I was growing up. I wasn't actively joined any girls groups that I recall, but we were a part of the church community.
We were Girl Guides.
Oh, right, yes.
Tell me about
And
that.
the other day I was in the co-op, and person working behind the counter said to me, "Are you Mrs. Lawrence's daughter?" And I said, "Yes. How would you know?" She said, "Well, she was my CGIT teacher."
Oh, okay.
She thought I looked like my mother. I think it's the white hair.
I forgot about Girl Guides. Yes, that was a big activity, Girl Guides.
Yeah.
Were there specific memories of Girl Guides that you have?
I haven't got a lot, no. I don't think I went to it. I joined it for very long. I mean, it was a short term.
I think me
had
too.
Other things to do, I guess. I don't remember a lot about it.
I did also want to ask about healthcare services in the early days. I know you mentioned Dr. Skelly. I think he had a house on Glendale. Is that where it was?
Was he on Glendale or was he on Hillcrest?
What's the second one?
Glendale.
Is it? Well, that must have been where he was.
Yeah.
There was another doctor, a Dr. Park, who lived 2 doors down from us, but he was the plant doctor. He wasn't.
Well, the doctor that we had was Dr. Williamson.
That was a little later.
Well, that was when we were still on Pine Street, because all the kids sort of got ear infections or something from the water, they said, and so he came to our house and treated us. And he became our doctor for always, because he was so attentive. So that was the doctor that I knew when I was a kid.
And he was operating out of the hospital eventually?
The original hospital was on where the Lapine Apartments building is.
Okay.
And yeah, that's where he operated from. And he lived on Hillcrest near the far end of Hillcrest. I don't remember who else was around. I didn't know Dr. Park then at all.
Well, I did because I lived so close. And they had 5 children.
Yeah, and then
You tend to know people like that.
and then the dentist was Dr. Sinclair,
Okay.
Oh, yes.
and he was an army dentist. So, he was
And behaved accordingly.
He was a big man. Yeah. So he was my dentist for years actually. Whenever you needed one, anyway. Can't remember anything else about the hospital. That's where my first baby was born.
Is that right?
Second baby, third baby, actually.
One of mine was born there, Allie.
Yeah, so no, I thought we were very lucky with medical care. I mean, I thought when they built the town, they tried to make sure that everybody's interests were attended to, that it was, the services were there for you, which was, I think they went overboard to make sure that, that was happening. So we were very lucky that way.
One of the questions that we've been asking is about local legends or unsung heroes, and I'm wondering if there are memories of local legends or unsung heroes that you have, and what made that person special. Are there particular people that jump out in your mind?
I mean, when we were growing up, you mean?
Yes.
I don't recall that as... I guess a person I admired was, we had ballet classes in Deep River, and there was a young girl came from Ottawa to teach ballet. Her name was Joy Dunning, and I played the piano for the ballet class, for the kids' class. And I just admired her. She was cute and attractive, and and she was so nice to me and friendly. And she invited us, myself and two of the girls from the staff hotel that was sort of helping to organize the ballet groups, to Ottawa to see her ballet. And that was the biggest thrill of my life. We got to go to Ottawa to a theater and see a real ballet live. So I guess that was the one person I really liked a lot. So, and it's influenced me. Yeah, I can't think of anybody who else might have. I mean, sure there were others. In high school, there was a fellow who taught math that I admired, besides Mr. Farwell in public school. What was his name now? Isn't that awful?
Where? In high school?
Yeah. in
Gordy
Pembroke.
Garrett?
No, yes, him too. Mr. Garrett was the math teacher. The other one was, I should have written his name down, now I can't think of it. Anyway, yeah. And I did well in math, and I guess that's why I liked them so much.
I did too.
Yeah, so.
What about thinking of growing up and being a teenager here? I'm wondering if you had memories of dating in the area. And do you remember your first date, for example?
My first date.
One thing that Erma and I agreed on long ago was we weren't quite prepared for the outside world.
What does that mean?
You know,
Split.
our experiences were not...
We were so well looked after here, I think, that you didn't distrust anybody or anything. I mean, you just felt, I don't know what to say, you felt comfortable with the life you had. The interesting part was, when we lived in Nobel, there was a family whose son I went to school with, Ross McConaughey. And the McConaugheys moved to Deep River, and he became the mayor of Deep River. But Ross was a friend of mine from grade 3 on at Nobel, and he taught me how to ride a bike. So I mean, I really liked him a lot. And when then he came to Deep River, of course. So that was really a big moment in my life. But we never really went out together particularly. I think he met other girls, and so other girls became his girlfriends. I went out with a boy from Pembroke who had a cottage here, and he used to come up and we climbed Mount Martin and did a few things like that together. I don't know what else to say. What did you ask again about? We had, the teenage club had cornrows on the beach. I mean, it was always a group thing, pretty much. I mean, we did have, people that I went out with, of course.
Spending time with. It was
we went to teenage club, we'd dancing, and yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it really was. There was another family that Tricia and I both were friends with, was the Crandalls in Pembroke, and her father was involved with the paper
Match factory.
He was in charge of that.
That's the girl that I used to go and spend the night at their house.
Yeah, and they had a cottage here, and she was the first girl I met in the summertime, and we were at the beach, and they had a cottage just around by the pump house, Crandall Cottage, so we became close friends too. So they were lifelong friends, and actually Ross McConaughey married her, and so our friendship continued through, until of course the last few years it hasn't, and he passed away, and so his family's gone. So
when you mentioned that because of the lifestyle here, you weren't prepared for the outside world. When you finished high school, was that at that time that it became most apparent that?
I don't think I was aware of it at that time. It's sort of looking back, you know, that our teenage years weren't the same as teenagers in major cities or.
I don't think I ever really became bluntly aware of that particularly. I went to a teacher's college in North Bay. Most of our friends went to Ottawa, and I went to North Bay just because my parents had family there that I could stay with. And then I got a job teaching in Camp Petawawa when I came back. So that was interesting too, because then I stayed in Camp Petawawa the teachers had a camp that they were assigned to if they wanted to live in it. So I lived with other teachers in this, in the camp in Camp Petawawa. So I was there for quite a few years actually, and I really enjoyed my teaching there.
Who are you teaching? What age groups?
Well, I started like grade 3, and I had grade 3 for a few years and grade 1, and then I had kindergarten. And I just loved kindergarten. So that's where I stayed for about 9 years. And that's when I came to Deep River. They were looking for someone for a kindergarten class. And I had young children at that point that I thought would be nice to be closer to home. So I taught in Deep River from 1964 till 1970, I guess, here. And then I went into special ed. And then I was all over the county, sort of doing in speech and language area. So that was what I did till the end. And I retired in 1990. So Trish went away to school for a while.
Where did you go, Trish?
I've been to more schools than. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your school, the schools that you've been to, about your journey that way.
Well, I started school in Ottawa, then went to school in Montreal, and then, of course, there was Chalk River and Deep River and Pembroke and Toronto and Halifax. That's probably it.
That's quite a few.
Quite a few. Yeah.
What were you studying in Toronto and Halifax?
In Toronto, I went to Branksome Hall, it's a girls' school. And in Halifax, I was at Dalhousie University. Mostly that's just what I did. I went to school and then I got married and had children, and here I am.
Tell me about raising your family.
Well, now I live in Wisconsin, and the family are all long grown and long gone, yes, 4 of them. So I married a boy that I've known since I was 13 here in Deep River.
Well, I broke the rules. I worked, and of course, my mother's friends thought it was just terrible that I was leaving my babies at home and working. So that was what you grew up with at that point in time. You know, you're supposed to be a good mother and stay at home. But anyway, I did have help. I had people come in and stay with my children and whatnot. So, but I really enjoyed what I was doing. And it was like a long day. But anyway, I really enjoyed it. It was great.
I did want to circle back a little bit to the early days when you were first here. It was such a time of transition, as you've described, people coming from everywhere. We have been doing a little bit of research on the families that did live here before the town was built. And I'm wondering if you have memories of those first families. Did you know the first families when you were first moved?
I think the problem was, I don't know if Tricia would say this too, we didn't know them because it was unfortunate. They were moved off the land that they were originally had, back onto like Wiley Road and other places, and we didn't have any attachment to them. which was too bad. Later on, I think we've met later, some of the families and some of the offspring. But at the time, we really didn't, and there was a very big divide. And I think there was a lot of maybe mistrust from the native people because they had been moved away, and we were resented. In fact, I think Deep River, we were resented by Pembroke too, because I think of the I might be wrong about this, but I think it was because Pembroke had a social setup, and Deep River coming in paid more for employees, and so it sort of put a crimp in, I guess, the financial area. That this is what I've been told anyway. So it could be wrong. I don't know, but that's what I understood. And I think we found sometimes a little resentment in Pembroke. I mean, we made good friends in Pembroke, not that, but there was, I think, among the adult population, that resentment was there.
Was there some division within the town when you were describing the different houses, depending on what your size of your family was, or what the work you were doing? Was growing up as young people, did you feel that tension?
Did you?
What?
Feel that there was a tension or a divide in Deep River among
Well,
us?
I do remember a girl who lived 2 streets up yelling at me, just because you live on Beach Avenue.
See, I never experienced it. I heard about it from other people, but personally, I never felt that.
Well, I didn't either. I mean, I remember it to this day. It just shocked me.
Yeah. And we all had different homes, and there's different levels of homes, partially your family, but partially I guess your work position. I mean, the scientists, they wanted to attract scientists, so they're not going to give them a house they can't live in. So, that was understood.
Mind you, it was a test.
Eh?
It was a test.
Yeah, that's true.
The early days were a test for
The houses,
Yeah,
the frost
on the walls.
on the walls. Yeah.
Even when my children were little, and we lived in a wartime fort too for the first couple of years we were married. And the blanket still froze to the wall if you had a bed up against the wall. And we had a cupboard in the kitchen, and you didn't close the doors because the food would freeze in the cupboard against the wall. Yeah. Wow. I mean, they weren't very well built for our season, for our weather conditions, and so they were like.
Well, it was 1945, and materials were scarce.
Yeah.
And so there was good reason that these houses were sort of thrown together.
Yeah, and short of second floors and right, insulation. So.
Yeah.
It sounds like some challenges, but that your memories are very fond of.
Yeah.
Of
Absolutely.
That time. Yeah.
Our parents might have had a different view if you could interview them, but I think we felt quite lucky in a lot of ways. I mean,
I thought it was lovely.
yeah.
Tell us the families you remember.
Well, then there was Dr. Cockcroft and his family, and that was Dorothea, Jocelyn, Elizabeth, Christopher, and Catherine, and the nanny. And then next to them were the Roves. And I'm not sure what the mother and father's name was, but they had Dermot
And the Volts lived next door
and
to us for that
Rachel
one
and
winter.
Bridget and Jane. And I remember asking the father, how come it was a Jane after Dermot and Rachel and Bridget? He said, because she was plain Jane. He was one of the boat builders, I think.
Carmichael.
Oh no, Carmichael's lived across the street at that point. They
Did he? Okay.
And they had Margaret and Elizabeth and Dougal and Lauren. And then there were Hatfields, and they had Wilsey and Douglas and Donnie and Margaret.
And Wilsey Hatfield kept coming back every year. But they moved back out East Coast. They were East Coast people. And he would visit my sister, Sheila, and he would go to the Octagon Gallery every summer. And I think it's only the last 2 or 3 summers that he hasn't come. So he always
Dougie Park also came.
Yeah. And Dr. Park lived on your street too.
Mm-hmm. 2 doors down. Yeah.
See, on Pine Street was us, and I don't remember the first people now that was there, but the Beamishes, the Cornwalls. It was a very short street, so there was only a few houses on it. And I don't remember who else. I think later on there was other people across the street, which I don't remember, but I do. Those people were the ones that were here the longest and friends of my parents.
And when you had to move, did you all move to Glendale after that?
Yeah, we moved to Glendale. We still kept in touch with them, but they didn't move. Some of them did move. They had to move off Pine Street eventually, but the Cornwalls moved, but they moved up to Spring Street, just that one street up from Beach.
Mm.
On Glendale, who lived on Glendale? Now the names are leaving me. The Langs lived down the street from us. The Kays, which are no longer living. Although their son came to this reunion this summer, and my daughter met him because they used to play together. Because my mother lived on Glendale. Well, as I said, we did, and so when my children went over to visit her, the Kays lived next door, and so they would play with Brian, and so that was, can't remember who else lived on that street. The names, I should have written them down too, and I would remember, but anyway, all people I know and I would have recognized again. The other incident that happened just after we came to Deep River was they killed a bear right at Centennial Rock area. And it was kind of shocking because we hadn't ever experienced dead animals ever that I could recall. And they had it hanging in the tree because they killed it there, and I don't know why they had it hanging in the tree. But everybody was down to see this bear, except I wasn't too curious to see a dead bear. But that was a big event because having wild animals that close to everybody was a little bit shocking. But I guess it was not unknown.
And still isn't.
And lately it's even been more recent, so.
And who had killed the bear? Do you remember?
I don't know I don't know whether it was the, who destroyed the bear, whether it was, we didn't have police force in Deep River. We had our guards, like.
Mm-hmm. Well.
Until it was later, later that we had a, and I don't know, the records would probably tell you, I can't remember when we had a police force, but.
I could see how that would make an impression.
Yeah.
Have this bear right in your backyard.
Yeah, right down here at the river.
Yeah.
One year too, there was a flood, and this was when the first couple of years we were here. I guess it was before the dam was built. And I know we used to go, my father took us up, we had picnic on the rocks up at Tricia, and you could see the rapids there before the dam was built. What was I going to say about this? Oh, there was a flood, and it flooded all Lemure Beach and up into the trees, and they found a dead deer in the flood, which sort of shocked us too. But that was the only time I remember it being that badly flooded. I guess there were other years since, but that was before the dam was in control of the water. So,
when the dam was established, what did that look like for the waterfront here?
I don't think it changed the waterfront very much.
We used to have huge log booms floating down the river. And a lot of the boys we knew thought it was great fun to get out on the log boom and walk around it. And why, if they'd ever fallen in, and not be able to get up through the logs. But they all survived.
Even as recent as in the 70s, when we moved up the river, the steamboats were still coming down with log booms, and they were collecting them below the dam. In fact, there was a chute there before the dam was built, and they would have these booms that crossed the river and would collect the logs, and then they would corral them in the log boom, and they would pull them down the river with the steamships. The tugboats, actually. And we have pictures. I should have brought that picture. I've got 2 pictures that who took. He was a photographer here in town. His son's still here, George. newspapers. My memory for names is failing me. But anyway, he took some pictures, and I have the plaques that he had made with the pictures of the booms and the tugboats. But they would come down the river and take the booms down to Pembroke area. And so that was a big event. But the only trouble with the log booms is logs would get away, and it was dangerous for boating because you could run into a log that could be under the surface and you wouldn't see it, or it could be a dead head that was sticking out, which there's still some dead heads up river in the Little Presqu'île. But other than that, that was a fascinating sight.
Yeah, I'm sure. It would be neat to see.
As far as the water line, like level, I mean, it still goes up and down. Like, I think 3-4 years ago, it went up 8 feet at our house.
Wow.
And it took down a retaining wall and 2 little shacks that we had, one for our outdoor watering system and one with a hose that we'd stored with the pump in case of fire. So,
Do you know, I just thought there used to be a pier going out into the river from just below our house where the yacht club was. Do you remember that?
yeah. Yeah. And they had, that was for boats. That's where the boats were. It wasn't,
I know.
It wasn't where it is now, like where the boat club is now. No, the pier was out from just above your house.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they worked from there, because that's where the yacht club was originally.
Mm-hmm. Once we had 3 bears at the top of one of those 100-foot pines outside our house. And it was just in the afternoon when the small children were coming from school. And so the police shot the bears. And my mother was so upset, she went down in the basement and hid. But they said there was nothing else they could do, because if they shot them with a tranquilizer gun, they would fall out and die anyway.
They didn't have the means of catching them, I guess. Had to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we live in the bush. I keep saying we live in the bush. You have to live with the wildlife. My husband complains because the raccoons come, and the skunks come and dig up the grass. I said, well, we've got grubs in the grass, so that's our problem, not their problem. Oh, dear.
Coming for a snack.
Yeah. No, the changes have been really quite amazing in Deep River. But sorry, we've lost so many of our businesses. Because we used to have a jewelry store, and we had, a lot of commercial business. And yet we don't. And we had 2 grocery stores. We had 3. We had IGA up on the highway, A&P store, and Value Mart, which was Loblaws before.
You would think that businesses would come back with all the building they're proposing to do, and
Yeah, I don't know why. Maybe our transportation has increased such that people go elsewhere.
It's fun to imagine, though, such a busy downtown with so many businesses that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, we had ladies' wear store too, as well as. There were so many things that we had. We had a bake shop too, I think, at one point.
We had a what?
Bake shop. Somebody had baking. They did downtown. Anyway, some things were short-lived, but some things lasted. But Ritter's was the mainstay. They had both the dry goods store as well as menswear, and that was a very popular place. So.
I'm sure always see people you knew if you were at Ritter's. Yeah.
Okay. Well, my sister has been an artist for a long time, and painting was her strong point. And so this was done a long, long time ago. I think it must have been done in the late 60s, because this was taken. She painted this from down on the river, just between Cockcroft School and the high school. And this log house was there when we came. It was probably part of the Native people's homes. And I talked to her this week to find out more about the painting. And she said she thought the building was used for storage, that the company used it or the construction people used it either for storing road supplies for the road, like salt and things, but she wasn't sure. And I think it was torn down eventually because, or burnt down, whatever they did with it. But I had this picture and I just thought I'd like to share it so that you would know what was there before. But there was another building further down across the street from where the yacht club is now, was a big building. It was the ice house. And they stored ice in that house. They cut it off the river and they stored it there for what? I'm not really sure. I think they used it for refrigeration I don't know whether they used it for the cafeterias or what they used it for, but that originally was the ice house. And it was a big building there.
They had a central heating plant and pipes going to a lot of the buildings in town.
And that plant was right where Chevron Suites is now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we used to catch the bus to go to school.
But that heated the Cockcroft School.
It heated Cockcroft School. The other memory was at Cockcroft School, I taught there, and I had kindergarten, and I was in the basement of the upper level. And the steam pipes went through my room. And some days I'd come to school and all the children's paintings and drawings that I'd posted up on the wall would be down on the floor because of the sweating steam pipes. The humidity would be so bad. So I complained finally one year. I got so tired of picking up paintings off the floor. I complained bitterly about this pipes. And so they came and they wrapped them with asbestos wrap.
How wonderful.
So we didn't have any humidity anymore, but we had asbestos wrap. So that was the last year I spent at Cockcroft School. Yeah. So
the other dangerous thing, they used to drive trucks through town spraying bug stuff.
Yeah.
And all the little children would be running behind in this spray.
In this fog. It was a fog truck for fogging for mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my
And
goodness.
so they ride their bicycles too, and
Wonder anybody lived through it.
they're all still alive, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, we didn't know.
Different times, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, for sure. When we graduated from grade 8, Dr. Cockcroft had offered to present books to achievement people. So I guess I don't know how many people got books. But this book was given to me, signed by Dr. Cockcroft inside, for achievement in English and social studies, it said. My sister, who was the artist, she got the dictionary when she graduated, and I thought, this is kind of interesting. So I think I got the wrong book, but anyway, I really appreciated this. It was signed by Dr. and Mrs. Cockcroft. So I might just give it to the museum if they would like to have it.
Pretty special.
It was very special. And the ceremonies was held at the cafeteria of Crawley McCracken's cafeteria. I don't know if you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big space. So
Yeah, they had, at the cafeteria was a big cafeteria room, and so that's where they had the graduation ceremony that year. I don't know why it was second year at Deep River. It's probably the one finished place that we could go to.
There are a lot of existing pictures of us at dances.
Yes. In fact, they were published in the paper not long ago of our group.
Really?
And I should have found the picture. I never thought about bringing that, of us all sitting at a table. I think it was at the gym, in the gym.
In the gym, yes, I have that
That's
picture
where we had
too.
dances.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was a picture of our teen group. So it was a really good picture, I thought. And I think I have it at home somewhere too, but it was published in the paper,
Recently?
like in one of those 30 years ago, 40 years ago, et cetera, et cetera. So,
I will look that up. But
Look
if
at-
you know the date when it was published, let me know.
okay, I don't know the date, but it would be
I'll look it up.
in the 50s. It would be early 50s.
My pictures are all carefully stored in Wisconsin.
Okay, you can't look it up. Okay.
So
I need some guidance when it comes to archives. I discovered.
Well, many thanks to you both for coming and sharing your stories. What wonderful memories, and I feel very lucky that you were able to come and join us today. And if there's anything else, please always feel free to reach out. And
Well, thank you very much. This has been really fun. And I thank you for your guidance, because it was helpful to have somebody to lead us away, lead us on the discussion. So,
You had so many memories, so thank you.
thank you.